Hey, how's it going guys? My name is Zealwood and today, as previously requested, we are taking a look at Sonic CD. A true classic Sonic considered by many, which until now I've actually yet to play, with the intentions of answering the ultimate question as always, is it worth your time? So, Sonic CD is a single-player, 2D, retro, fast-paced, time-travelling platformer. Set in the Sonic universe as you'd expect, you'll be taking on Dr. Robotnik and his badniks, collecting the time stones and saving Sonic's friends, all while manipulating the flow of time in attempts to ensure a good future for the planet as best you can. So, firstly, to those of you thinking about playing Sonic CD yourself, I am actually playing on the Steam port version of the game, which as you can probably tell, by default is set to run so fast it's basically unplayable. Not to worry though, because once you've installed it, make sure you play it for about a minute, close it, then go into your NVIDIA control panel, go to Manage 3D Settings, click Program Settings. If it doesn't appear on the list by default, click the Add button. Sonic CD should be on the list since you just recently used it. Find the max frame rate feature on the list below, set it to 60 FPS and away you go. If you don't have a NVIDIA graphics card however, you can find the guide online for basically the same thing anyway. Another thing to note, once you are in game, make sure you go to Help and Options, click on Settings, then change the video filter to Nostalgic if you want to embrace the true Sonic CD experience. Right, so back to the review. Since this game was originally released in 1983 for the Sonic CD, it obviously comes in the classic 16-bit old school art style that we all know and love, except with better and more consistent frames, clearer visuals and less buggy than the original release. Colours used are genuinely bright and vibrant as with all the classic Sonic games, giving good colour contrasting and shading to help distinguish foreground and background designs well, even on the heavily mechanical areas. Textures and detail used are also brilliant as always, with CD being no exception to that rule. Even in my own occasional pixel art, I do like to take inspiration from Sonic 1 and CD because I honestly like their vibrant simplicity that much, especially with their foreground mechanical designs and distant scenic backgrounds. Love it. Lighting effects are obviously non-existent, which is to be expected. 1993 was way too early for that, but the lighting used on sprite designs like siren effects and screen lights are all very nice and provide plenty of graphical immersion, no problem whatsoever. The UI is pretty much a copy and paste of at least 4 of the original Sonic titles, which is fine because hey, don't fix what ain't broke as they say. Level layouts feel humongous compared to the original Sonic game, with multiple paths to follow, different stage layouts depending on your location in time, with interesting scenery and ground clutter to enjoy as you go. Character and enemy designs are also very nice and up to standard of the original old school Sonic games, brilliant keyframes, colourful animations and out of the box designs you can't help but enjoy. Since I've never played CD until now, it was also quite refreshing to see so many new sprites that aren't in the original trilogy, especially with the different boss fights and the chronological introduction of Amy Rose and Metal Sonic. Overall, a brilliant visual quality that any old school Sonic fan can truly appreciate. The OSTs in Sonic CD are, as we all expected, more than good enough to be amongst the timeless 2D collection. Fucking brilliant. I especially love with the Steam version of the game specifically, there's an option from the main menu that allows you to choose between the entire Japanese or American versions of the soundtrack at will, giving every stage of the entire game a completely different soundtrack for past, present and future. That's a potential 8 different soundtracks per zone. Absolutely fucking insane. Each track is your classic blend of simple, bold quality combined with uplifting, catchy beats and memorable, crisp FX sounds that you simply cannot get enough of. Some of which have indeed made it onto my now 11-year-old iPod, which, as I always mention, is an incredible feat in itself. I personally kept my playthrough on the JP version though, since they are better overall in my opinion. However, I would definitely recommend changing it to the US version when watching the intro and ending cutscene of the game, because these versions are so good they're considered iconic. Everything else sound related is just as good quality, a lot of new sounds made specifically for the game like enemy, environmental and boss fight sound effects, with a lot of imported sound effects from the original Sonic, which I love. Well, apart from Sonic's jump sound, which I would have liked. Overall, a superb sound quality that again maintains the absolute highest standard for the timeless, fast-paced platformer. Now for the gameplay. So firstly, Sonic CD, like its 90s 2D brothers, doesn't have any difficulty options to choose from before you play. It is what it is, whether you like it or not, just like every good game should be. It does however have two playable game modes, the standard game mode as you'd expect, and time attack for taking on specific stages in the fastest time possible. The game also comes with a leaderboard system linked only to your Steam friends list, which shows their total points once they've completed the game. The base concept of the game is obviously very similar to the other 2D titles. Dr. Robotnik is up to no good, you play as Sonic, take on his badnik infested zones, defeat him a few times until you eventually get to the final boss. Specifically to CD however, the lore does have a bit more backbone than usual. An extraterrestrial body known as Little Planet appears in the sky on the last month of each year. The planet appears to be large enough to have multiple areas, support its own ecosystem, and is home to 7 gems known as Time Stones. Dr. Robotnik obviously decides to take advantage of this situation by hooking a fucking gigantic chain to the planet to hold it in place, roboticizes all the local animals, and uses the time stones to manipulate each zone depending on your location in time. Sonic naturally doesn't agree with this, so travels to Little Planet to save the animals, manipulate the flow of time himself, and take on Dr. Robotnik. So once you start the game, you watch the iconic intro cutscene, which if you were paying attention earlier, you will watch with the US soundtrack selected, take control of Sonic and play. The controls are as you'd expect if you're familiar with Sonic games. These include your general movement and jump, but specifically to CD, you also get your spin dash when holding down and pressing jump, or your peel out ability when holding up and pressing jump. Spin dash is a speed boost that damages enemies since you are technically rolling, but peel out will likely be your most used ability in this game since the time traveling feature of CD only applies when you're initially running and not rolling. Speaking of, the gameplay concept is just as similar to the other early Sonic titles. This obviously includes collecting rings, completing stages, and taking on a boss fight at the end of each zone. Specifically to CD though, you will notice signposts dotted around each zone with either the word past or future written on them. When interacted with and for a limited time, if Sonic travels consistently fast enough, you will notice a star-like effect trail behind him, which, provided you don't lose speed, will give you a short transition cutscene where you travel through time to a different version of the stage you're currently on. This means different foreground and background visuals, different soundtrack, and slightly altered level layouts to match your new location in time. There are a total of 4 different times in each zone: present, past, bad future, and good future. The ideal goal of the game is to actually go back in time on each zone, find and destroy 1 Metal Sonic hologram and 1 robot transporter, which is not that easy by the way, but will result in the good future version for that particular stage, all badniks destroyed, and having the resident animals bounce around the zone to indicate you've done a good job. If you don't do this on a stage however and decide to travel to the future, you will get the bad version, which has a considerably more mechanical look to it and a faster, more serious soundtrack to match. Don't feel too bad about it though, because most of the time the bad future has the best soundtrack anyway. Sonic CD also shares the same 50 ring system as Sonic 1, meaning if you can get to the end of each zone with at least 50 rings, once you pass the goal plate, you have a few seconds to jump into the giant ring that floats just behind it. This allows you to take on one of 7 special stages where you need to destroy a specified amount of UFOs to claim one of the 7 time stones mentioned earlier. Be careful though, as the controls are a pain in the ass to use, and you need to make sure you avoid any hazards and water, as they reduce your allotted time and rings collected very quickly. If you actually manage to collect all 7 time stones and get a good future on every single zone of the game, you will get to see the good ending cutscene since you've basically 100%ed the game. This however becomes a very difficult task towards the end, since the stages start to get a lot harder to navigate and contain more hazards to take away your rings. Fortunately, the game does come with a save system similar to Sonic 3, which allows you to load up the stage you were on even if you lose all lives and game over. I should also mention, once you've completed the game, you do unlock and have the ability to play as Tails. Ability wise, he's basically a copy and paste of Sonic 2, spam jump to fly for a limited time, and he spin dashes exactly like Sonic does. Other details like power up boxes and checkpoints I won't go into since they're pretty self-explanatory even for a 6-year-old. Combat in CD is also pretty straightforward. Most enemies die when jumped on, but a few need to be rolled into. Boss fights however are a bit more elaborate and quite out out of the box considering the date of release, especially the Metal Sonic Race and the Eggman Treadmill. Would have definitely confused my 6-year-old self. Overall though, a brilliantly simple, fun gameplay experience no matter how old you are. So for the ultimate question, is it worth your time? Its incredible soundtracks, aesthetic variations and up to standard gameplay make for an undisputed addition to the great iconic 2D Sonic games. I'm going to give this game a 4.5 star or 88 out of 100. If there's one game I can guarantee my 6-year-old self would absolutely love, it's Sonic CD. What makes this game so unique is of course the time traveling system, which originally I didn't really like the idea of, but once I completed the game it's actually been executed very well. Each stage feels just right in terms of size, design and completion time required, even when you consider a completionist run of the game by searching every single zone for the holograms and transporters. The fact that all enemies are killed when you destroy said transporter is a very tiny detail, but the fact that you can run around an entire zone pretty much freely, collecting rings and accessing the special zone is a tiny feature I actually fucking love. As I already mentioned, the changing foregrounds, backgrounds and especially soundtracks when time traveling is a genius idea for its time, which would have absolutely blown my mind as a kid. I like how the save feature that comes with the Steam version is very forgiving in terms of game overs and stage resets, so going for a completionist run is a lot easier since you don't get sent back to Act 1 of a particular zone, which I did indeed utilise myself. Naughty naughty. The only bad things I noticed really were rings occasionally floating inside of solid objects, and sometimes when time travelling you would get stuck inside something at your new time destination, both of which do affect immersion just a touch, but can't really be helped because the game is coded to simply change zone layouts when time travelling and not load a completely new stage every single time. But don't worry, it's not like you're gonna lose sleep over it anyway. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more games I should be reviewing each week, and thanks again BitTunes for the video request. I was eyeing this bad boy up for a few years now, but since you've asked for it, I thought fuck it, may as well. But as always, all the best guys, take care.